how many deals did you lose while Congress was still debating it, or as you might say, still dithering over it?
I heard a lot, Hans, from our small business owners that were concerned. One customer told me that his customers moved to Germany because they were nervous we would not be here on June 1st. But the good news is we got a $140 billion authorization. It takes us almost 3 years, 2.25 years, and gives a lot of headroom to make sure we can support those businesses going forward.
You sort of have a foot in both worlds, both the government side, the private side. Any deals in the offing coming down the pipeline?
Well, this week alone, the board is going to consider $7 billion worth of authorizations. We have a board meeting today and tomorrow in the event we were not reauthorized. At the end of tomorrow, we'll have $99 billion in our portfolio. So it's perfect timing. This is a just-in-time bill. The president's going to sign it and increase our lending cap to $120 billion.
How much concern are you hearing from a lot of the companies that you finance about what's happening in Europe? Is that going to be a draw on demand?
Well, two things are happening with Europe, I think. One, some of that sourcing that was going to Europe is now coming to America. I've had companies come to us and say, we'd like to buy in America because we know you can finance it now that you got reauthorized, and we're concerned the European banks may not be able to finance it. So that's actually, in some way, we can help some U.S. exporters in that regard. Secondly, most of the companies that we work with, most of the exporters, are exporting to places like Asia, Latin America, Sub-Saharan Africa, and those markets are less impacted by what's going on in Europe.
So what I'm hearing you say is that Europe's problems right now, the benefit of the U.S., at least in terms of exports. Flush that out, how that's going to work long-term, 6 months out, 6 years out.
Well, 6 years out's a long way. I think it's hard to tell. I mean, Europe has the capacity to fix itself, and they're working hard to do so. What I'm trying to say is the exporters that we deal with, the exporters that Export-Import Bank that this bill will help, mostly are focused more primarily on Asia. Saudi Arabia is a very strong market. Australia is a strong market. Sub-Saharan Africa. Those markets are very robust. I was with a bunch of small business exporters this morning. Each one of them is having a better year in 2012 than 2011 and has better prospects for 2013.
Talk to us about Boeing, the Dreamliner, anything down the pipe in terms of new jet orders and what sort of financing you're providing?
Well, Boeing is our largest single exporter, a company that we're proud to work with, and we're going to be reviewing a number of transactions this week for aircraft going to Africa, to Ethiopian Airways, to a number of other carriers that I'm happy to say they're Boeing customers, not Airbus customers, and part of that is because we got the financing to back up those sales.
So we're seeing a little bit of an uptick on exports. Some of that has to do with the position of the dollar. Talk to us about what a weak dollar means for the president's exports as he goes towards that goal of doubling them towards 2014.
You know, I don't know much about the dollar. That's not. I leave that to Secretary Geithner to talk about the dollar. But I can say U.S. products are very competitive. The month of March, we had over $186 billion worth of export, the largest single month ever recorded. So export growth is strong. Obviously, always like it to be stronger. And Export-Import Bank, the President's made clear, is very key and critical to making sure we keep reaching those export goals.
One final question. You're in the private world, where you were. Talk to me about some of the comments you hear from this White House on private equity. Do you think it has a chilling effect on business in this country?
You know, listen, I was in business for 20 years. Private equity, there are some good private equity firms and some that aren't so good. They're focused primarily on profits and building equity. They're not necessarily focused on building jobs and taking care of the government and the population as a whole. They're very different animals.
One final question then. Good private equity firms, bad private equity firms. What category does Bain fall into?
You know, I haven't followed Bain close enough to give you an answer on that, but I will tell you this. Firms that create jobs and build their communities, that's what I'm interested in. Those firms are good for our society, but some firms are not about that. They're about reducing jobs, cutting back on jobs, or in some cases closing factories. That's not always in our best interest.